What's up guys, Pokemon Professor K here for the Pokemon Evolutionaries, and today we are back again with another competitive TCG deck profile. Trying to keep this trend going here where we give you guys all kinds of deck ideas. Nationals is coming up right around the corner, so we really want to address some of that and give you guys some insight as to what you could possibly play to maybe, I don't know, win Nationals for instance. Alright, so today's deck profile is going to be Mega Rayquaza, not the colorless one. Dragon Rayquaza. So of course, no Rayquaza deck can start off without Rayquaza himself, the Dragon type Rayquaza EX. 180 HP, 2 attacks, Dragon Claw, and Dragon Strike. The only time I've ever had to use either one of these attacks is where I had no other option. So if you gotta use them, your game's not going too well for you, but Dragon Strike did win me a game one time. Flip a coin if tails. This Pokemon can't use Dragon Strike during your next turn to fire a Lightning and a colorless. Again, it won me one game, but let's just say we don't want to be doing that. So we got 3 copies of Rayquaza EX for the Dragon type. And of course, we've also got the Mega, which is our main focus of this deck. Mega Rayquaza EX, 230 HP, Dragon type, Dragon Ascent for 300 damage. Finally, a deck that we can use that actually has some viability, that has this number right here. 300 damage, wiping out every single card in existence right now. 3 fire, a lightning, and a colorless. Discard 2 energy attached to this Pokemon. It seems bad on paper, and a lot of people disregarded it as something that was just gimmicky, kind of like the Charizards were, but this actually has some potential. I'm going to show you guys why. Not to mention, Mega Rayquaza has this ancient trait, Delta Wild. Any damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's grass, fire, water, or lightning Pokemon is reduced by 20 after applying weakness and resistance. His only weakness is to fairy, so there's no issue there. But Delta Wild is a really, really strong ancient trait, and the only one that has it is Dragon type Mega Rayquaza. Alright, so there's our main attacker. How are we going to get this done? Well, let's start off here with this card. We have 2 copies of Hydreigon EX, 180 HP. It has the ability Dragon Road. If there is any stadium card in play, the retreat cost of your Dragon type Pokemon is 2 colorless energy less. That's pretty strong considering that Mega Rayquaza and Rayquaza both have a 2 retreat cost. So if there's a stadium in play, you've got free retreat cost on this guy. That's very key. I'll show you why in a bit. But more importantly even than that is we have an attack that we can actually use on Safeguard Pokemon, Shred. For a Psychic, a Dark, and a Colorless energy, 80 damage, Shred does a decent amount of damage actually. This attack's damage isn't affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. So if you got a Safeguard Pokemon in the opposing game there, opposing mat I should say, you're going to be able to hit them for 80 damage, even though you're an EX, because it goes through everything. This is really awesome because that means that you don't necessarily need a non-EX attacker because, remember, we have access to double Dragon Energy, which means anything. Psychic, Dark, Fire, Electric, it can be any of those. It doesn't even matter. So that's important to notate. Mainly he's there just for free retreat, but if you have to, he's a good safeguard counter as well. Now we're going to begin to see why this deck has viability. It's because of this card right here. Reshiram. 4 of them. You really want to start with this guy. It's very important. His ability, Turbo Blaze. Once during your turn before you attack, if this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, you may attach a fire energy from your hand to one of your Dragon Pokemon. So, picture this turn. You got a Mega Rayquaza in the active position with a double Dragon Energy attached to it. Okay? You use Hydreigon EX to retreat him into this guy right here. You're able to attach a fire energy with Turbo Blaze, giving it 3. And say you got a double Dragon Energy in your hand. Boom, attach the double Dragon Energy. He's all powered up, ready to go. Then, you can use Switch out of the active, go to Mega Rayquaza, and just start wrecking things. Now, again, you got to have 4 of these guys. There's no other way around that. This is your main key to victory right here, is using Reshiram. And you can only attach from your hand, so you got to make sure you have fire energy in your hand as well when you go to use this ability. But we're going to look into ways to do that here momentarily. 4 copies of Reshiram right there. Get the job done. It also has the attack Bright Wing for 110 damage, 2 fire, electric, and a colorless. And you have to discard a fire energy attached to this Pokemon in order to use the attack. It has 110 damage, which knocks out things like, I don't know, Shaman? Hey, speaking of which, we play 2 of them in this deck. The main reason is to get cards. The ability setup. once, when you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench, you may draw cards until you have 6 into your hand. So he's a little bit of a liability sitting on the bench at 110 HP, but it allows you to set up and get what you need to power up this guy and just start running through the opposing field. That is our Pokemon lineup. That is it. That's everybody. So let's go on to our supporters next. Very, very easy supporter lineup. Very thin, as a matter of fact. Because Shaman is a good draw supporter in and of itself, even though it's not a supporter, it's a good draw addition. We've got Professor Sycamore here. Matter of fact, let's do it this way. We're going to take 4 of these guys, pretty much a staple in every single deck. Professor Sycamore, discard your hand, draw 7 cards, gets you what you need, and gets rid of what you don't need. Gets the job done. So that is our main draw supporter in this deck, but we also run 3 copies of N as well because N is still strong, especially now that Trump card is no longer able to be used. N is going to come back a little bit more, I think. Each player shuffles his or her hand into his or her deck, and then each player draws a card for each of his or her remaining prize cards. So this way you can draw 6 cards in the beginning of the game, and if you fall behind for some reason, you're able to get your opponent's hand size down as well and help yourself out. Alright, so the final supporter is going to be 2 copies of Lysander. Very, very important to have at least 2 Lysander in this deck because this is your key to victory. You want to use Mega Rayquaza to attack 3 times. That's it. You don't want to attack any more than that because then you're just going to be running the risk of not having enough energy. So Lysander will bring up all of those EXs off of the bench so you can start sniping them off for 2 prizes each. Alright, that's the entire supporter lineup. Let's take a look at the items here. Of course, we're going to run 4 Ultra Ball. We want to get everything we need as fast as possible. Discard 2 cards from your hand and search your deck for any Pokemon that you want. In the beginning stages, you're going to want to have a Rayquaza, a Reshiram, and a Hydreigon. That's what you want to have overall to get yourself going. Alright, next item card we're going to take a look at here is a card that will help accelerate energy even more than Reshiram. This is what I was talking about by saying other ways of getting energy into play. 4 copies of Mega Turbo. This is probably the only time you'll see 4 copies of this card in a deck, but this is the one that needs it the most. This allows you to attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to one of your Mega Evolution Pokemon. So again, as I said before, you can potentially power up Mega Rayquaza in 1 turn after he's been evolved, of course, which should be turn 2. The way you're going to do it is attach a Double Dragon Energy, Mega Turbo from the discard pile, giving it 3. You can Turbo Blaze for the 4th energy, and if you have the right cards, it's a little bit harder to do. You can either Mega Turbo again if you have 2 of them, or you can retreat, switch, and then switch again to Turbo Blaze 1 more time. It is possible though because I've done it. It's crazy, but it's happened. So that's one way that you're going to get Mega Rayquaza to get powered up in 1 turn. Of course, you're not going to get anywhere unless you have these Spirit Links. Hard evolving a Rayquaza is definitely not a good thing. Your turn does not end if the Pokemon this card is attached to becomes Mega Rayquaza EX. So you got 3 of these. You want to get them on your Rayquazas as fast as possible and get yourself Mega Evolved by turn 2 or turn 3 at the absolute latest. And the way that you're going to be able to do that is by playing 3 copies of Trainer's Mail. Search the 4 top cards of your deck. You may reveal a trainer card you find there except for Trainer's Mail and put it into your hand. Shuffle the other cards back into your deck. So when you play a Trainer's Mail in the beginning of the game, you're really looking for this guy right here. Later on in the game, you're probably looking for this. So it's really there for 2 main cards. If you absolutely need a supporter as well, this is another thing. Gets every single type of trainer card, or say you need a stadium, anything. There's so many things that Trainer's Mail is good for. It's such a good card. I just can't stress enough how important it is to run anywhere between 2 to 3 copies of this in every single deck. Next up, we've got 3 copies of VS Seeker to get back any of those 3 supporters over there. Lysanders are probably going to be the most targeted use of VS Seeker in this particular deck, but you're always going to need to get some kind of draw supporter at some point too, so it gets that back as well, whether it be N or Professor Sycamore. Either way, VS Seeker gets the job done. Next up, we run 2 copies of Switch. I really would like a 3rd copy, but there is kind of a 3rd copy in this deck, and you'll see why in a little bit. This allows you to switch your active Pokemon out onto the bench with something else. So this is really good for putting Reshiram in the active, retreating into Mega Rayquaza or something like that, or say retreating from Mega Rayquaza into Reshiram, and then switching out. That's what I was looking for. Then switching out back to Mega Rayquaza so you can attack again. 2 copies of Switch. The other thing is with Reshiram, you're going to want to have energy in your hand. So what better way to do it than play Professor's Letter? This is a card that's kind of fallen by the wayside lately just because of how aggressive decks are, and so we're dependent on special energy. Now we're depending on basic energy again, so Professor's Letter, 2 copies, gets you 2 energy, basic energy, into your hand with 1 card, of course. Reveal them, put them into your hand, 2 copies. This way you can start turbo blazing as much as possible and as consistently as possible. Alright, and finally, the last item card we're going to put in this deck is Scramble Switch. I originally had Computer Search in this deck, but Scramble Switch is such a smart option. If you have a Mega Rayquaza that's about to get knocked out by some chance that your opponent gets enough damage dealt on you, the perfect way to save your energy is a Scramble Switch. It allows you to switch a Pokemon off the bench into the active and take all the energy that's on the active with it. Switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. You may move as many energy attached to the old active Pokemon to the new active Pokemon as you like. Very, very strong card in this deck, and I can't stress that enough. And this is our 3rd switch. So there you go. If you have to have a switch in play and you don't have any other options but to use this, you're going to have to use it. But it's really, really good in situations where you want to save energy. Very much a lifesaver. And the final trainer card in this deck is 3 copies of Scorched Earth. Once during each player's turn, that player may discard a fire or a fighting energy from his or her hand. If that player does so, he or she draws 2 cards. Draw support, and it gets us fire energy for Mega Turbo in the discard pile. Very strong stadium. Not to mention, it helps us use Hydreigon's ability, Dragon Road. The only way it's going to get knocked out of play is if your opponent plays a counter stadium, and even then, it's not such a big deal once you start getting like 1 or 2 fire energy in the discard pile, because you're still going to be able to use Dragon Road even if your opponent puts a stadium card in play. But that is the stadium that works the best with this deck, so we run 3 copies of that. Finally, the energy lineup is just as simple. We run a lot of fire energy. As a matter of fact, we run 8 fire energy. You're going to burn through this stuff pretty quick, and you're going to want to get it all back with Mega Turbo. So we do run 8 copies. It seems a little bit excessive, but I find that it's pretty much the minimum in order for this deck to be successful more times than not. This deck has lost me 1 game. I've played probably 20 with it, so it's very, very strong. I feel that it's even better than Colorless Ray. So that's just one thing, in my opinion. You guys can have your own opinions, of course, but with the loss of Trump Card, I feel like even Dragon Ray got stronger. Alright, finally, 4 copies of Double Dragon Energy. Yes, it's susceptible to Enhanced Hammers, but it is very, very important to have Double Dragon Energy as well. This is what you're going to use to really, really turbocharge this Mega Rayquaza over here. Not to mention it allows you to use Shred, and you can use it on this attack or this guy, any of the Dragon Pokemon. That's what you have to have them attached to, and you can use any of the combinations of energy that you want, whether it be Fire and Electric, or Psychic and Dark, or whatever you want. It doesn't even matter. That's what Double Dragon Energy does. It's rainbow energy for the dragon types, except for it's 2 instead of 1. Which is really good because most dragon types have a 2 different typing attack no matter what. Latios, say for instance, not the Latios from this set, but from Plasma sets. That's another card that's probably going to be really good with Double Dragon Energy as well, so take that into consideration. Alright guys, here is the deck. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and enjoy the way that I built this deck. If you don't, make it your own, do with it what you will. It's your deck to change up and move around. This is what works best for me right now. Any suggestions, comments, you can leave them in the comment section down below. And of course, be sure to like this video if you did like it, and subscribe for more Pokemon TCG content. That's it for today, guys. Enjoy the Mega Ray deck, have fun with it, and we will see you next time. I'm Professor K for the Pokemon Evolutionaries.